Zodiac, the ink of blood. The fourth floor of the San Francisco Chronicle smelled like burnt coffee, cigarette smoke, and desperation. Typewriters hammered the air like machine guns. Phones rang without mercy. Editors barked orders across desks stacked with paper mountains. Outside the large, dusty windows, the city vanished slowly into the morning fog, a quiet contrast to the restless storm inside the newsroom. Caleb Reed sat hunched over his desk, dark circles pressed beneath his eyes like bruises. He hadn't gone home. Again, a half-empty cup of coffee sat to his right, cold and bitter. His left hand hovered over a typewriter key, frozen mid-thought. On the page before him was a police summary of last night's murder. Another young couple found in a parked car, blood pooled thick beneath them like oil. 6 weeks. 6 weeks and 4 bodies. The Bay Area was beginning to feel like a hunting ground. Caleb rubbed his eyes hard and leaned back in his chair, exhaling together with the building itself. It felt like the city was holding its breath, like San Francisco was waiting for something worse. Reed. The voice came sharp from behind him. He turned to see Frank Daly, the city editor, 50 years of cigarette smoke etched into his skin, sleeves rolled up like he was always ready for a fight. "There's something here for you," Frank said. Caleb straightened. "What is it?" Frank didn't answer. He just placed a thick brown envelope onto the desk. No return address. No postage stamp. Just a red circle drawn around a single word in black ink. Zodiac. Caleb's fingers froze. The word alone sent a quiet shock through him, like his name whispered by a stranger in a dark room. "You're kidding," Caleb murmured. Frank shook his head slowly. "It came an hour ago. The front desk clerk found it slipped under the door. No sender. No name." Caleb stared at the envelope as if it were alive. "Open it," Frank said quietly. Caleb hesitated. Then he slid a finger beneath the flap. Inside were 3 things. A letter, a strange grid of symbols handwritten on a separate sheet, and a bloodstained scrap of fabric. His throat tightened. He unfolded the letter first. The handwriting was careful, playful, mocking. "Dear editor, I like killing people because it is so much fun. It is more fun than killing wild game in the forest because man is the most dangerous animal of all. I am the Zodiac. If you print my cipher on the front page, I will not kill again this week. If you do not, I will go on a killing rampage Friday night. Do not look for me. You will not catch me. I am in control." Caleb's hands trembled. This can't be real," he whispered. Frank didn't move. "It's real," he said. "The blood's been tested. Matches one of the victims from Vallejo." The room seemed to tilt. Caleb sat down slowly. Jesus Christ. The Zodiac Killer wasn't just bragging. He was issuing instructions. Caleb picked up the second paper, the cipher. Dozens of strange symbols. Circles, crosses, squares, shapes that looked like they belonged to a language no one spoke. A puzzle written in murder. "Why me?" Caleb asked quietly. Frank rested his hands on the desk. "Because you're the smartest bastard in this room, and you're reckless enough to chase it." Caleb looked up. "And because," he pressed. Frank sighed. "Because if we don't play his game," he said, "someone else dies." That night, Caleb didn't go home. He barely moved from his desk. He copied the cipher again and again onto blank paper, studied shapes, compared patterns, counted symbols, built imaginary alphabets inside his skull. His mind raced in circles like a dog chasing its own shadow. By midnight, the newsroom had emptied except for one janitor and the flickering glow of Caleb's desk lamp. At 1:47 a.m., his phone rang. He almost knocked over his coffee. "Hello," he said, voice rough. A distorted inhale on the other end. Then a whisper that sounded too close, too intimate. "You opened my letter." Caleb stood up. "Who is this?" Silence. Then a soft laugh, almost childish. "You journalists think you tell stories," the voice said. "But I create them." Caleb's heart hammered. "You're the Zodiac," he whispered. "I prefer artist," the voice corrected. Caleb swallowed. "Why call me?" "Because you're paying attention," the Zodiac replied. "And pretty soon, so will the whole country." "Why the cipher?" Caleb demanded. "What does it say?" Another laugh. "Oh, don't ruin all the fun just yet." The line went dead. Caleb lowered the receiver slowly. His body trembled. He realized then, with sick clarity, that the killer had crossed a line no murderer ever should. He had entered the newsroom. And now, the story was hunting him. The next morning, the Chronicle printed the cipher on the front page. By noon, the phones were exploding. Dozens of amateur codebreakers called in. Teachers, engineers, teenagers, madmen. And one call, one voice, that didn't try to solve anything at all. It only whispered, "Your family is beautiful, Caleb." Caleb's blood turned to ice. The phone sat on Caleb Reed's desk like a loaded gun. It hadn't rung again since that whisper the night before. "Your family is beautiful, Caleb." But its silence was louder than any sound. Every time someone passed his desk, every ring from another department, every click of a typewriter made his spine lock tight. He hadn't slept. He hadn't gone home. Frank Daly had tried to send him away. Caleb refused. "I'm not leaving this building while he can see me," Caleb said. Frank had looked at him for a long moment and finally sighed. "I'll assign 2 officers outside your place." "My place isn't the problem," Caleb replied. Frank didn't argue. He almost knocked over his coffee. "Hello," he said, voice rough. A distorted inhale on the other end. Then a whisper that sounded too close, too intimate. "You opened my letter." Caleb stood up. "Who is this?" Silence. Then a soft laugh, almost childish. "You journalists think you tell stories," the voice said. "But I create them." Caleb's heart hammered. "You're the Zodiac," he whispered. "I prefer artist," the voice corrected. Caleb swallowed. "Why call me?" "Because you're paying attention," the Zodiac replied. "And pretty soon, so will the whole country." "Why the cipher?" Caleb demanded. "What does it say?" Another laugh. "Oh, don't ruin all the fun just yet." The line went dead. Caleb lowered the receiver slowly. His body trembled. He realized then, with sick clarity, that the killer had crossed a line no murderer ever should. He had entered the newsroom. And now, the story was hunting him. The next morning, the Chronicle printed the cipher on the front page. By noon, the phones were exploding. Dozens of amateur codebreakers called in. Teachers, engineers, teenagers, madmen. And one call, one voice, that didn't try to solve anything at all. It only whispered, "Your family is beautiful, Caleb." Caleb's blood turned to ice. The phone sat on Caleb Reed's desk like a loaded gun. It hadn't rung again since that whisper the night before. "Your family is beautiful, Caleb." But its silence was louder than any sound. Every time someone passed his desk, every ring from another department, every click of a typewriter made his spine lock tight. He hadn't slept. He hadn't gone home. Frank Daly had tried to send him away. Caleb refused. "I'm not leaving this building while he can see me," Caleb said. Frank had looked at him for a long moment and finally sighed. "I'll assign 2 officers outside your place." "My place isn't the problem," Caleb replied. Frank didn't argue. The cipher begins to speak. By noon, the Chronicle's inbox overflowed with letters. Dozens arrived by hand. Hundreds by delivery. People from all across California were mailing in translation attempts. Some were wild. Some nonsense. A few unsettling. Caleb spread them across a conference table like pieces of a corpse. Then one letter stood out. Typed. Addressed only to. See read. No return address. No handwriting. Inside was a single page, and beneath it, a partial translation of the Zodiac cipher. Symbol equals I. Symbol circled plus equals AM. Symbol equals not. Symbol equals afraid. Symbol equals of. Symbol equals you. Caleb's throat tightened. Across the bottom. Start from the double circle symbols. He's writing in spirals. Caleb rushed to the original cipher. Spirals. God help him. The pattern aligned. Sentence fragments emerged. Word by word. Piece by piece. Until finally, the message became visible. "I am not afraid of you. You will not catch me. I am watching. I know your names. You think you hide behind paper. Paper burns." Caleb backed away from the table. "This isn't a confession," he whispered. "It's a declaration of war." Frank read it carefully, jaw clenched. "Print none of this," Frank said immediately. "We do not give him fuel." Caleb's eyes burned. "He's already in the fire," he said. Home. Caleb finally went home after dark. The lights of his apartment flickered weakly against the fog. The hallway smelled like old carpet and loneliness. Inside, silence. He locked the door behind him and leaned against it, breathing for a long moment. "Emily," he called. No answer. His chest tightened as he stepped into the kitchen. Then he saw her. Emily stood at the counter, holding a mug, her face pale. She looked up slowly. "Where were you?" she said. It wasn't anger. It was fear trying to sound like anger. Caleb crossed the room and pulled her into his arms. "I'm so sorry," he whispered. I should have called. She trembled against him. I got a letter, she said. Caleb froze. From who? Emily pulled away and handed him a white envelope from the table. No stamp. No return. Inside, a photo. Caleb's blood ran cold. It was Emily, taken through their own window, standing at the sink. The timestamp read, 2 hours ago. Below it, in red ink. I see everything. Good evening, Mrs. Reed. Caleb dropped the photo. I swear to God, he breathed. I swear I will find you. Emily's hands shook. The police came earlier. They don't know what to do. They say it's probably a hoax. Caleb laughed bitterly. That man doesn't waste ink, he said. The second call. It happened at 3:08 a.m. Their home phone rang once. Twice. Caleb picked it up on the second ring. Reed speaking. Hello, hero, the Zodiac whispered. Caleb stepped out into the hallway, away from Emily. If you touch her. Oh, hush, the Zodiac interrupted. I don't hurt muses. Only audiences. Caleb closed his eyes. You won't get away with this forever. Forever, the Zodiac laughed softly. All I need is tonight. Click. The scene. 5:42 a.m. A jogger found the body under the Golden Gate Bridge. Male. Mid-30s. Stabbed 12 times. Pinned to his chest, a letter. To C. Reed. Inside the envelope. You did not print the message. So I printed him instead. Your move. That morning's Chronicle front page wasn't a cipher. It was a photo of a corpse. The weight of God. Caleb vomited in the newsroom bathroom. Frank stood outside the stall until he was done. You don't need to do this, Frank whispered. Caleb wiped his mouth with shaking hands. He chose me, he said. Frank looked older than ever. No, he replied. He infected you. And still, the cipher spoke. One of the codebreakers had cracked a second layer. Buried inside Zodiac symbols was a message no one had seen at first. A second message. A smaller one. Designed only for a certain mind. Caleb's. It read, the best stories require a sacrifice. Who will you choose? Caleb collapsed into his chair. He hadn't just been challenged. He had been drafted. The man's name was Arthur Lee. That was what the police said. 16 hours after the body beneath the bridge, Inspector William Hale stood before a flock of microphones and declared that they were closing in. Arthur Lee, 42, Hale announced. Former military. Electrical technician. History of psychological instability. He matches preliminary descriptions from 2 witnesses. Caleb watched from the back of the press room. He didn't clap. He didn't smile. He felt nothing. Do you believe it? Frank murmured beside him. Caleb slowly shook his head. Zodiac doesn't like being second-guessed, Caleb whispered. And he definitely doesn't like losing the spotlight. Frank frowned. What does that mean? Caleb swallowed. It means if Arthur Lee is innocent, he said, then someone else is about to die. The wrong man. Arthur Lee lived alone in a rotting duplex across the bay. When police entered, they found wires wrapped oddly around the walls. Hundreds of radios. Broken clocks torn apart and taped back together. On the kitchen table, diagrams. Symbols. Not the Zodiacs. Different. Disorganized. Worried writing. Not the handwriting of a man who enjoyed killing. Caleb and Frank stood behind the glass as Lee was interrogated. Did you write these letters? Hill demanded. Lee's eyes darted. I told you no. I just listened to frequencies. What frequencies? Messages beneath messages, Lee whispered. Caleb flinched. That line belonged to the Zodiac. But Lee didn't say it with pride. He said it with fear. The call. That night, Caleb received another phone call. This time, the Zodiac didn't whisper. He laughed. They caught your ghost, didn't they? Caleb's jaw tightened. If you're innocent, prove it. A low chuckle. Innocence is boring. A pause. Then, I let them find him. Caleb's breath stopped. You what? I needed him on the board, Zodiac explained. Even kings hide behind pawns. You'll kill him, Caleb whispered. No, said Zodiac softly. You might. Click. The setup. Arthur Lee was found dead 2 nights later, hanging in his cell. But it wasn't suicide. Someone had carved a symbol into his chest. A circle, crossed through. Zodiac's signature. Next to it, written in blood on the wall. You chose him. Caleb dropped to his knees when he read it. The Zodiac hadn't just killed him. He'd framed the world. Emily vanishes. Caleb went home to emptiness. The door unlocked. The apartment silent. No Emily. No struggle. No blood. Just one thing. The television, on. Static filling the screen. until the picture cut. A video played. Grainy. Black and white. Emily sat in a chair. Tied. Her face bruised. "I'm okay," she whispered. But her eyes said otherwise. The screen flickered. Zodiac's voice entered, low and intimate. "Smile, Caleb. The nation is watching." The screen went dark. The choice. An envelope arrived 5 minutes later. Inside, 2 photographs. One, Emily, alive, blindfolded. The other, a man tied to a chair. Unknown. Blood at his temples. A note between them. One lives. One dies. "Tell me who." Caleb screamed. Frank held him while he broke. The broadcast. At midnight, the Chronicle printed nothing. At 12:05, every television in San Francisco cut out. Emergency alert. A hijacked signal. Zodiac's symbol filled the screen. Then, 2 chairs. Side by side. One with Emily. One with the stranger. Zodiac stood between them, face hidden. "Good evening, America," he said. "I've selected a journalist to be my editor tonight." He placed a knife gently against Emily's throat. "Choose, Caleb." Caleb Reed stood in a control room that no longer belonged to any television station on Earth. The lights were too bright. The air was too cold. And the screens, every single one of them, showed Emily. Tied to a chair. Alive. Breathing. On the monitor beside it, the other person. A man Caleb had never seen. Bearded. Bleeding. Terrified. The Zodiac stood between them like a priest officiating a broken wedding. Frank Daly clutched Caleb's arm behind the cameras, his fingers digging in hard. "Don't," Frank whispered. "Don't play this game." "I'm already inside it," Caleb said, hollow. On the screen, Zodiac tilted his masked head slightly, as if listening. "Time," Zodiac said calmly, "is the only honest thing in the world." A digital clock appeared in the corner of every TV. 2 o'clock. 2 minutes. The rules. Zodiac raised one finger. "One dies," he said simply. "One walks away." He raised a second finger. "You choose." He raised a third. "And America watches." The producers tried to kill the feed. It didn't work. Engineers shouted. Phones rang. The Zodiac's signal swallowed everything. Every channel. Every city. Every lie ever told through glass. Frank turned Caleb around hard. "You can't choose," he said. "If you choose, he wins." Caleb stared at Frank with eyes that were already empty. "He already has." On the screen, Emily lifted her head. She managed a small, crooked smile. "I love you," she said. Caleb broke. "The choice begins." Zodiac stepped toward the stranger. "Remove the blindfold." The man sobbed openly now. "Please," he begged. "I have kids." Zodiac nodded sympathetically. "Good," he said. "That makes this better television." He turned back toward the camera. "Tick," Zodiac whispered. 1:30. Caleb fell to his knees. Frank knelt with him. "We can't save her by sacrificing someone else," Frank pleaded. "That's not saving. That's murder with better lighting." Caleb clutched his head. "Then what am I supposed to do?" Before Frank could answer, Emily spoke again. "Choose me," she whispered. Caleb's chest constricted. "Don't," he cried. Emily swallowed. "If you don't choose, he'll kill us both." Zodiac beamed behind the mask. "Romantic," he purred. "Tragic. American." "The lie." Caleb stood. He turned toward the live camera. Toward the nation. His mouth shaped words he never planned. "I choose the man," he said. The control room erupted. Frank grabbed him. "What did you do?" Zodiac cocked his head. "Interesting," he said. "You sacrifice her." Caleb's eyes didn't move. Then he spoke again, quieter. "To anyone listening. Emily and I have no children," he said. The Zodiac stiffened. The bearded man on screen sobbed harder. Caleb took another breath. "And Emily can't swim," he continued. Zodiac's head tilted again. Caleb leaned closer into the camera. "So if her chair is next to water." A pause. Zodiac didn't speak. Caleb whispered, "It's not Emily." The room went silent. The reveal. Zodiac laughed. Slow. Low. Delighted. "Oh, I had such fun with your file," he said. "But you're right." Then he snapped his fingers. The woman in Emily's chair began to scream. Her voice changed as she screamed. A wrong voice. A performer's voice. She ripped the blindfold away. Not Emily. Another woman entirely. Actress. Drugged. Breaking under the weight of fear. Caleb collapsed in relief. Then terror returned. The man in the other chair, real. Still bleeding. Still bound. Zodiac stepped toward him now. "And since you noticed the trick," Zodiac sighed. We return to the rules. He raised the knife. You don't choose, Zodiac said. So I do. The death. Zodiac carved slowly. Not to kill, to perform. The screaming filled every home in America. Caleb tried to look away. He couldn't. No one could. When it was finished, Zodiac leaned close to the camera. Good television, he whispered. Then the screen went black. Aftermath. The city collapsed into silence. Then rage. Then chaos. The Chronicle building filled with police. FBI. Men with badges and haunted eyes. Caleb sat on the floor beside Frank's desk, staring at nothing. Frank pressed a hand to his shoulder. You didn't kill him, Frank said. Caleb smiled, not happily. Didn't I? Home. Caleb returned to an apartment that was no longer a home. Police tape framed his door. Inside, Emily sat on the couch. Alive. Safe. Wrapped in a police blanket. When she saw him, she ran into his arms. They cried together on the kitchen floor. Later, when the shock slowed, Emily pulled away. Her eyes had changed. You said I couldn't swim, she whispered. Caleb nodded. That's how he knew you weren't really there. Emily looked down. And if I had been there, she asked. Caleb didn't answer. The final envelope. It waited on their table. No return address. Zodiac circle. Caleb opened it carefully. Inside, a photograph. Caleb, taken from outside their window, holding Emily. At that moment, beneath the image, written neatly, you still lose. The story is mine. Emily began to shake. Caleb crushed the photo in his fist. No, he whispered. Not anymore. The city no longer slept. Neither did Caleb. San Francisco had developed a new nervous system overnight. Television antennas, ringing phones, emergency radios, newspaper racks stripped bare before dawn. Zodiac had not just hijacked the airwaves. He had rewritten how fear traveled. And now, finally, he had made a mistake. Caleb sat alone in a forgotten FBI office downtown, staring at the waveform printouts scattered across the desk. The room smelled of chemicals and dust, the scent of a place where old secrets were supposed to die. But nothing died anymore. Agent Marjorie Haynes stood behind him, arms crossed, jaw tight. The audio engineer isolated Zodiac's voice from the broadcast, she said. Filtered out echo distortion. Reconstructed pitch. Caleb didn't look at her. He stared at the shape instead, the black lines spiking and falling like a dead city skyline. And he asked. Haynes hesitated. And the voice is fake, she said. Caleb turned. Voice modulation? He asked. Not just modulation, she replied. Deliberate affectation. Rhythm manipulation. A performance. Caleb let that sink in. Zodiac's greatest weapon was theater. A pattern in silence. Caleb hadn't been working alone. For the first time, the police didn't tell him to leave. For the first time, they listened. Over 3 nights, Caleb rebuilt the Zodiac's words on a giant whiteboard. Every letter, every phrase, every pattern, the killings, the dates, the lunar cycles, the spacing between letters and the ciphers, the way certain phrases repeated, I am in control, paper burns, you think you know me. He circled one sentence and read. Messages beneath messages. Arthur Lee had said it. Zodiac had said it. Caleb whispered it aloud. Something clicked. Show me the earliest letters, he said. An officer pinned yellowed copies to the board. Caleb scanned them. Then he froze. Look at the margins, he said. Haynes leaned closer. What about them? The edges weren't random. Every early Zodiac letter had symbols near the borders. Tiny, nearly invisible. Not decoration. Guidelines. Coordinates. Every letter is a map, Caleb whispered. The hidden pattern. They followed it. Plotting marks. Overlaying maps. And slowly, a shape emerged. A spiral, centered on one place. Fort Point, under the Golden Gate Bridge, where the body had been found, where the story had changed. Haynes stared at the map. Meaning? She asked. Caleb swallowed. That's not just a crime scene, he said. That's a shrine. The tape. It arrived in a plain envelope, dropped at the Chronicle's front desk. Addressed. Not to the press. Not to the police. To Caleb Reed. Inside. A cassette. Caleb didn't play it at the office. He took it home. Emily watched him from the kitchen as he slid it into the player. She didn't speak. She couldn't. The tape clicked. Hiss. Breathing. Then, a different voice. Not theatrical. Not playful. Old. Tired. Real. I don't know why I'm doing this, the voice whispered. Caleb leaned forward. The man continued. I practiced every version. Southern, British, clean, broken, strong men are remembered. Strange ones are myth. Caleb's skin prickled. The Zodiac. Without his mask. I don't want you to think I'm angry, the voice said. Anger is noise. What I have is silence. A pause. I wasn't always this. Emily wiped tears from her cheeks. Caleb said nothing. The tape continued. I was once invisible. That's worse than death. Worse than pain. When no one says your name, you begin to disappear. Static disrupted the tape. Then an address. Whispered. Quiet. Precise. Caleb scribbled it down. The house. The address led to a dead-end suburb. Rows of identical homes. No life. No identity. Caleb and Haynes approached the house quietly. One story. No lights. Mailbox rusted. No curtains. The door was unlocked. Inside, dust and decay. Photographs covered the walls. Not family photos. Not memories. Newspaper clippings. Every Zodiac headline. Every murder. Every photo. Pinned. Framed. Worshipped. Caleb stepped deeper inside. On the kitchen counter. A camera. Still warm. Haynes exhaled sharply. He was here, she whispered. A phone rang. In the living room. Caleb answered. The voice was no longer pretending. You're walking through my head, Zodiac said softly. Caleb turned slowly. Why send the tape, he asked. Zodiac sighed. Because you're the only one listening between the lines. Where are you now? A chuckle. Everywhere you're not. The truth beneath the mask. Caleb turned to the wall. There. A final photograph. Zodiac as a child. Young. Alone. Standing in front of an empty home. Written beneath. This is where I was erased. Caleb swallowed. You didn't kill for fun, Caleb whispered into the phone. Zodiac didn't deny it. You exist because someone else didn't, Zodiac replied. Then the line cut. The message inside the message. In the basement. They found another cipher. Smaller. Different. Caleb cracked it in under an hour. It read, You don't want to stop me. You want to understand. That's how I will win. Caleb sat on the floor. Haynes knelt beside him. You're inside him now, she said. Caleb stared blankly. Yeah, he said. And now, he's inside me. And then, the news. Another call. Another body. Another letter. But this time, it didn't threaten Caleb. It thanked him. I remember who I was. You helped me. Now let me help you. Caleb crushed the paper. Emily clutched his arm. What does that mean? She whispered. Caleb stared into the dark window. It means, he said, he's changing the game again. The first thing Caleb felt when he woke was cold. Not the gentle cold of morning air through a cracked window, but the heavy, wet cold of something wrong. He sat up sharply. Emily was gone. The bed beside him was empty and untouched, as if it had never been slept in at all. Emily, he called. No answer. His chest tightened. The front door stood open, slowly swaying, breathing with the apartment. A note lay on the floor. Handwritten. Same careful ink. Same circle. Caleb picked it up with shaking hands. Family is a luxury you can't afford. His vision blurred. The countdown. The phone rang. 1 ring. 2. Caleb answered, already shaking. Zodiac's real voice this time. No mask. No acting. I didn't take her, he said calmly. Caleb closed his eyes. You're lying. No. Zodiac answered gently. I relocated her. Caleb swallowed. Why? Zodiac exhaled. Because you still believe stories, and cleanly. A pause. Then, you have 12 hours. Click. The hunt. The police mobilized instantly. Roadblocks. Canvassing. Door-to-door sweeps. Helicopters. Dogs. Haynes at the center. Caleb barely moved through it all like a man waking inside someone else's life. His mind filtered only patterns now. Zodiac's words. Zodiac's maps. Spirals. Margins. Coordinates. This wasn't random. Emily wasn't taken anywhere. She was placed. Caleb grabbed a notebook. Redrew Zodiac's shrine spiral. Marked earlier murder sites. Tracked lines. Drawn them outward. Until they circled one place. A childhood memory. The house. Haynes followed his gaze. That's where he was erased, she whispered. Caleb nodded. That's where he puts things he wants to become invisible. The basement. The basement smelled like whetstone and decay. Caleb moved carefully down the steps. Police lights flashed above. In the corner. A chair. Empty. Restraints undone. Fresh. On the wall. Childlike writing. Carved into wood. She was here. You were late. Caleb collapsed against the wall. Then, footsteps upstairs. Shouting. Caleb ran. The call he didn't expect. It came from his father. After 10 years of silence. Caleb, the old man said through static. I think I know him. Caleb froze. Know who? A long pause. Zodiac. The father's sin. Peter Reed hadn't been a good man. Caleb had known that since he was old enough to understand disappointment. But hearing this, it broke something deeper. We grew up together, his father said. Reform school. Same cell. Different sins. Caleb's jaw tightened. What was his name, he asked. Silence. Then, Daniel Harper. Memory returns to kill. They pulled records. Daniel Harper. Institutionalized. Abused. Adopted. Unadopted. Transferred. Disappeared at 18. No family. No burial. Nothing. Caleb whispered. He didn't just grow up alone. He grew up erased. Haynes finished. The exchange. Emily called. Video. Live. Her face filled the screen. Bruised. Alive. Zodiac's voice behind the camera. You may trade, he said. Caleb's heart raced. Trade what? Zodiac stepped into view. No mask. Just shadow. Your father, he said. The room went silent. Caleb shook his head. No, he whispered. Zodiac tilted his head. He helped erase me. Now you help me remember. I won't, Caleb said. Zodiac smiled faintly. Then she disappears. The truth Caleb never knew. Peter Reed was arrested within the hour. Dragged into pain he deserved, and some he didn't. The interrogation room smelled like justice and rot. Haynes questioned him. Caleb watched. Did you hurt him? She asked. Peter closed his eyes. Yes. Caleb flinched. Did you abandon him? Yes. Caleb's throat burned. Did you report him when he ran? Peter whispered. Yes. Caleb stood fast. He wanted to hit the old man. But hate would not save Emily. The location. Zodiac sent coordinates. One place. An old orphanage. Burned down. Forgotten. Caleb alone entered. Against orders. Against logic. Against God. The room. Emily waited inside. Bound. Trembling. Alive. Zodiac stood beside her. Face visible now. Older. Tired. Hollow. Do you see me? He asked softly. Caleb nodded. Yes, he said. Zodiac sighed. I just wanted that. The shot. Gunfire exploded through silence. Sniper. Police. Chaos. Emily screamed. Zodiac staggered. Blood bloomed. He laughed. They arrested him bleeding. Emily ran into Caleb's arms. The whisper. As Zodiac was dragged away, he leaned toward Caleb. You still don't understand, he breathed. This isn't over. The city celebrated like a survivor who didn't yet know the infection was still in his blood. Front pages screamed Zodiac caught in ink so thick it almost bled off the newsprint. People hugged strangers on street corners. Bars gave free drinks to anyone who mentioned the name Daniel Harper. Street musicians sang nonsense victory anthems about a devil in handcuffs. San Francisco needed a monster to end. And now it had won. Caleb Reed didn't celebrate. He sat in a hospital hallway with Emily's head on his shoulder, both of them wrapped in borrowed blankets and fluorescent silence. They got him, Emily whispered. Caleb nodded. I know, but something felt wrong. Not the clean exhaustion of relief. Something coiled. Something unfinished. Zodiac speaks from inside. Daniel Harper, the man the world now called Zodiac, was held in a special medical containment wing. Guards stood at the door like statues from a forgotten empire. Caleb was allowed one visit. 1. The room was white. 2 white. Daniel sat in the center, bandages across his torso, and 4 dripping clear into his skin. He looked smaller, almost human. Caleb stepped inside. The door clicked. Daniel did not look up. I hear they're singing about me, he said quietly. Caleb crossed his arms. You're not a song. Daniel smiled faintly. Not anymore. Caleb waited. Silence. Then Daniel lifted his eyes. You came for an ending, he said. Caleb's voice was hollow. I came for truth. Daniel leaned his head back. Truth, he whispered. You arrested a man. That's not an ending. Caleb's jaw tightened. You confessed. Daniel nodded. To my life, he said. But not to every death. Caleb froze. What does that mean? Daniel smiled sadly. It means you caught a mouth, he said. Not the echo. The body. 2 hours later, a girl was found in Daly City. 19. Stabbed. Pinned letter to her chest. Zodiac's symbol soaked the paper. The room collapsed around Caleb when the police call came. But he's in custody, Frank barked into a phone. Jesus Christ, someone find me answers. The letter read, "You arrested the wrong future." Caleb stared at it, then whispered, "No." The pattern returns. Another murder. Then another. No frenzy. No panic. Each death. Carefully executed. Unusual. Different. No blood theatrics. No performance. Cold. Clinical. Whoever this is, Haynes said, they're not copying Zodiac. Caleb looked at her. They're completing him. The interview. Caleb demanded another meeting. They allowed it. Daniel Harper sat calmly, reading a library book they'd given him. Caleb slammed the photos on the table. "Explain," he growled. Daniel studied them. Slow. Soft. Then shook his head. "That's not my work," he whispered. Caleb leaned closer. "You taught someone else." Daniel didn't look up. "I inspired," he said. Caleb slapped the table. "Inspired what?" Daniel met his eyes. "A religion. The philosophy." Daniel leaned back against the wall. "I never killed for pleasure," he said quietly. Caleb almost laughed. Daniel continued. "They did it for unimportance," he said. "But what happens when someone else sees what you made?" Caleb whispered. "You created a mirror." Daniel nodded. "And now, there's more than one reflection. The trap." The next letter wasn't mailed. It was delivered digitally. Email. Addressed to Caleb.read at Chronicle. It included a live GPS map. Blinking. Active. A message beneath. "If you want the answer, come alone." Haynes tried to stop him. Emily begged him not to go. Caleb kissed her forehead. "If I don't," he said softly, "we'll never breathe again." The killer in the mask. The warehouse reeked of rust. Darkness swallowed Caleb whole. Then, applause. Clapping echoing through shadows. A figure stepped out. Masked. Different mask. Crude. Homemade. "Do you like it?" the figure asked. Caleb froze. "Who are you?" The figure chuckled. "Someone who listened." The confession. The copycat removed the mask. A young man. 25. Maybe younger. Eyes red. Skin pale. No life in his face. "I watched everything," he said. "Like a sermon." Caleb whispered. "You didn't want Zodiac to end." The man smiled. "I wanted him to multiply." The shot. Police sirens screamed outside. Too late. The copycat raised a gun. Caleb lunged forward. The gun went off. The young man fell. Blood soaked the floor. He smiled as he died. "He wasn't the only one," he whispered. Then he stopped breathing. And the silence. The murders ended. Just like that. No goodbye. No note. No signature. The city waited for something else. But nothing came. Caleb stood beside Daniel Harper's cell weeks later. "You were right," Caleb said softly. "There was more than one." Daniel closed his eyes. "Now you understand," he whispered. "You don't catch an idea. You survive it. Truth rarely arrives like a sunrise. More often, it leaks through cracks, slow, unwanted, and cold." For Caleb Reed, the truth came at 3:41 a.m. Through a knock on the door. He opened it expecting darkness. Instead, Emily stood there. Pale. Shaking. Barefoot. Her breath ragged. "Caleb," she whispered. "I think someone was inside the apartment." Caleb pulled her in immediately. "What happened? Did you see anything?" "I didn't have to," she said. "They left something." She opened her hand. A folded piece of paper. Caleb felt his pulse drop into his stomach. Zodiac's symbol. Drawn in red ink. Not mailed. Not delivered publicly. Placed. Inside their home. No more safety. Frank and Haynes arrived within minutes. They swept the building, questioned neighbors, checked emergency exits, and searched the roof. Nothing. No footprints. No forced entry. No fingerprints. "Whoever did this," Haynes said quietly, "knew exactly where your blind spots were." Emily sat on the couch, arms around her knees. "He was here," she whispered. Caleb knelt beside her. "I won't let anything happen to you." Emily looked at him, eyes wide. "It's not me I'm scared for." "What do you mean?" She swallowed. "He left a message on the back." Caleb turned the paper. It said, "You are getting close. Stop finding me." His breathing stopped. Frank rubbed a hand across his forehead. "So after catching the real Zodiac and killing the copycat, we now have a third?" Haynes answered, "No, we have the original remixed." The timeline cracks. The next day at the Chronicle, Caleb spread out everything on the conference room table. Murder photos, letters, maps, Zodiac's codes, copycat's messages, and the new note found in the apartment. He stepped back, looked at all of it as one single mural of violence. Then suddenly, Something clicked. The dates. Years of them. He checked again. Then again. Then his vision tunneled. "Oh God," Caleb whispered. "How did I miss this?" Frank leaned in. "What? Talk to me." Caleb pointed at the earliest recorded Zodiac letter. "This," he said, "was mailed the same week as the Pacific Heights fire." Frank frowned. "The apartments that burned down?" Caleb nodded. "And look, 3 months later, the first confirmed Zodiac murder." "Coincidence?" Frank asked. Caleb shook his head. "No. A transformation." Haynes' eyes widened. "You think the fire created him?" "No," Caleb said quietly. "I think the fire revealed him." He pointed to the tenant list from the fire. One name circled. One that shouldn't have mattered, but suddenly mattered more than anything. Daniel Harper. The visit. Caleb walked into the containment wing again, ignoring the guard's questions. Daniel looked older. Tired. Like he'd been absorbing every sin committed in his name. Caleb stepped up to the glass. "Why didn't you tell me you were at the Pacific Heights fire?" Daniel didn't move. Caleb slammed his palm on the glass. "Answer me." Daniel blinked slowly. "You weren't ready," he whispered. Caleb's breathing became jagged. "Why were you there?" Daniel tilted his head. "Sometimes you are born twice." Caleb frowned. "What the hell does that mean?" Daniel stared at him, eyes softening with something between pity and sorrow. "You're closer than you think." He stood, stepped forward until only the glass separated them, and whispered, "Find the woman who survived the fire." The survivor. Her name was Margaret Silvano. Age, 62. Occupation, retired nurse. Last known residence, a care facility outside the city. Caleb and Frank drove there immediately. The facility smelled like jasmine air freshener and bleach. Margaret sat by the window, knitting something yellow. She looked up as they approached. "Are you reporters?" she asked. Caleb nodded. "We need to talk about the Pacific Heights fire." Her hand stopped moving. Her eyes didn't. "That fire killed my family," she whispered. "But you're not here for sympathy." "No," Caleb said. "We're here because Daniel Harper was there. And so were you." Her gaze sharpened like a knife. "You think he started it?" "No," Caleb said. "I think he witnessed something." She closed her knitting bag slowly, then exhaled. "I remember him." Frank leaned forward. "What did he do?" "Nothing," she said. "Not a thing." Caleb frowned. "Then why did he remember you?" Margaret's lips trembled. "Because I saw the man who set the fire." Caleb's heartbeat stumbled. "Who was it?" Margaret's eyes filled, not with fear, but recognition. She looked straight at Caleb and whispered, "You." The world tilts. Silence. Heavy. Wrong. Impossible. Caleb felt his mouth open. No sound. Frank stepped back in shock. "What? What the hell are you talking about?" Margaret's voice was steady. "I saw him. Same eyes. Same posture. Same jawline. 20 years younger. But him." Caleb shook his head violently. "I was a child. Children can start fires," she said softly. "No," Caleb whispered. "I wasn't even there. I grew up in Nevada." Margaret's voice softened. "Memories lie. Trauma lies. Parents lie. Records lie." She leaned closer. "But eyes don't." Caleb stumbled backward. Frank grabbed his arm. "Caleb." "Hey, Caleb, breathe." "I wasn't there," Caleb gasped. "I wasn't." "She's confused. She's old." Frank pulled him outside. Caleb collapsed against the wall, shaking uncontrollably. "It's not possible," he muttered. "She's wrong. She's wrong. She's wrong." But Frank's voice wasn't comforting. It was careful, measured. "Caleb, we need to check your childhood records." The missing years. Back at the Chronicle, Emily joined them. Caleb sat between them, numb, while Frank opened every data source he could reach. Birth records, school records, medical records, neighbors, addresses. But something was off. An entire year missing. Age 7. No school enrollment. No medical visits. No address listed. Just a gap. A black hole. Emily whispered. "Why is a whole year gone?" Caleb couldn't answer. Then Frank froze. "Caleb, did your parents ever talk about a house fire?" Caleb's stomach iced over. He whispered. "No." Frank whispered back. "They should have." He turned the laptop. A news clipping. Headline. "Child survives house fire. Name withheld." Location. Pacific Heights. Date. 2 days before the apartment fire. Caleb breaks. Caleb stood, then stumbled, then sat suddenly, like the ground had vanished. "No," he whispered. "No, no, no, no." Emily dropped to her knees beside him. "Caleb, look at me. Baby, look at me." Caleb stared forward, unseeing. The survivor, he whispered. It was me. The final realization. Daniel Harper's words returned like a ghost. Sometimes you are born twice. Emily grabbed his face with both hands. Caleb, listen. Whatever happened, you are not him. Caleb finally looked at her. And for the first time in his life, he wasn't sure she was right. Caleb did not sleep. He lay in darkness, ceiling fan turning above him like a slow blade, cutting the night into pieces. Emily was beside him, awake as well. He could tell by the way her breathing never deepened. Their hands were close, but not touching. Between them, a fire burned that had no flame. It lived inside his head, flashing back, laughing, screaming, merciless. Memory is a closed door. Caleb sat up suddenly. I need to go back, he whispered. Emily turned toward him. Back where? To the fire, he said. Emily's eyes filled with fear. You don't mean the sight. I do, he said firmly. Frank protested. Haynes ordered. Emily begged. But Caleb was already driving. Pacific Heights slept beneath fog and guilt. The street was quieter than it should have been. The burned building had long been replaced by new stone and glass, but the ground itself still remembered. Fire leaves echoes. Caleb stood in the alley where emergency vehicles once lined up like tombstones. He closed his eyes, and the world cracked. The boy in the smoke. The memory didn't arrive gently. It slammed. Screams. Smoke. Heat. His own small hands black with soot. A woman shouting from somewhere above. Then a man's voice, rough, panicked. Get out, get out, get out. Caleb fell to his knees. His head split open with images. He saw himself, 7 years old, standing in a living room full of flame. And in his hand, a match. Daniel Harper stood in the memory too. Not as Zodiac. As a boy. Thin. Bruised. Terrified. Caleb stepped closer to him in the vision. I didn't know, young Caleb whispered. I didn't know the curtains would burn like that. Daniel stared at the fire with empty wonder. They said we make smoke disappear, he murmured. But it comes back. The lie that raised him. Caleb woke on the pavement, gasping. Emily held him. Haynes crouched beside them. Caleb's voice was breaking. I did it, he whispered. I started it. Emily shook her head violently. No, no, you were a child. It doesn't matter. Caleb cried. People died. Daniel watched it happen. It broke him. Haynes swallowed. And your parents? She asked gently. Caleb's face collapsed. They didn't tell me, he said. They moved away. Changed everything. Changed me. The last visit. Caleb returned to Daniel Harper for the final time. No guards tried to stop him. News had already leaked. The city was starting to ask. Who was the first spark? Daniel looked at Caleb with knowing eyes. You remember now, he said softly. Caleb sat. I was the first monster, he whispered. Daniel shook his head faintly. No, he said. You were the match. I was the one who chose to keep burning. Caleb's eyes flooded. I'm sorry, he whispered. For everything. Daniel's lips curved into something like peace. I waited years to hear that, he said. Then, he leaned forward. And now you have to hear this. Caleb stiffened. Daniel whispered. There was another man in that building. Caleb froze. Daniel's eyes sharpened. The fire didn't start with you. The true spark. Daniel spoke slowly. Your hand struck the match. But someone had already poured the gasoline. Caleb's heart thundered. Who? Daniel breathed out one name. Your father. The world went silent. The final crime. Frank tracked everything. Records. Insurance claims. Financial trails. It was all there. Peter Reed had been drowning in debt. One fire erased everything. A new insurance policy followed weeks later. The truth unfolded like rot beneath clean paper. Caleb cried until he couldn't breathe. Emily held him through it. Haynes whispered the final blow. He used you, and Daniel, to become clean. The confrontation. They found Peter Reed in Reno. A small apartment. Cheaper than forgiveness. Peter looked up and knew immediately. I always wondered when you'd find me, he said. Caleb stood shaking. You burned that building, Caleb whispered. Peter laughed weakly. I burned bills, he said. People just happened to be in the way. Caleb lunged. Haynes caught him. Words broke from Caleb's mouth like glass. You blamed me. You erased my life. Peter finally cracked. I saved you, he cried. Caleb shook violently. You buried me, he said. The sentence. Peter Reed pleaded guilty. No trial. No drama. The judge's words were quiet, but heavy enough to crush generations. Life. No parole. The choice. Caleb returned to Daniel Harper's cell one last time. I know the truth now, he said. Daniel nodded. And you weren't free because you were never angry at him, Caleb whispered. Daniel closed his eyes. I was angry at everything, he said. Except you. The end of Zodiac. Daniel Harper died that night. Heart failure. No theatrics. No letter. No message. Just silence. The Zodiac mythology died with him. At least, that's what the world believed. The fire fades. Caleb and Emily left San Francisco. Quiet town. No press. No noise. One morning, Emily asked, "Do you still think you're like him?" Caleb stared out the window. "No," he said. "I think I survived him." The town had no sirens. No headlines. No history worth remembering. It was the kind of place where people forgot weather and forgave everything else by dinner. Caleb and Emily had been there 6 months when the silence finally started to speak. At first, it was gentle. A creak behind the small house. Leaves whispering at night. The sound of trains passing 10 miles away like dreams trying to leave the body. Emily found a job at the library. Caleb wrote again. Not news. Not crime. Stories. Fiction that didn't need blood to breathe. And slowly, unbearably slowly, something like peace began to imitate life. The scar you don't see. Caleb dreamed sometimes. Not about murder. Not about masks. About hallways. Doors. Rooms he couldn't open. Each dream ended the same way. Caleb stood before a mirror. But the reflection did not move. He stopped sleeping with the lamp on after 5 months. Emily stopped checking the windows after 2. They kissed like survivors. They laughed like children who learned too much too early. Life tried to happen. And sometimes it did. The final letter. It arrived on a Thursday. No return address. No city stamp. No signature. Caleb stood at the mailbox for a long time before bringing it inside. Emily watched from the doorway. Is it? She asked. Caleb shook his head. I don't think so. Inside. A single sheet of clean white paper. 3 sentences. Typed. Not Zodiac's handwriting. Not Zodiac's voice. Just words. You were never the villain. You were only the fire near him. He chose the burning. Caleb sat down slowly. Emily wrapped her arms around him. He did not cry. Not anymore. The echo fades. The newspapers printed aging anniversaries of Zodiac. 50 years later, the unanswered questions of America's favorite monster. They spoke of Daniel Harper like a myth. A shadow with a name. Caleb read none of them. Emily read none of them. They planted a garden instead. Something living. Something real. The grave. In spring, Caleb returned once. Alone. Daniel Harper's grave was small. Unmarked. The state didn't believe monsters deserved headstones. Caleb knelt. Spoke no words. Just placed something down. A match. Unlit. Then he walked away. And yet, that night, Caleb dreamed again. Just one image. A boy in smoke. But this time, the boy walked out. Toward light. The last voice. Years later, quiet years, Emily found Caleb sitting at the table staring at the same letter again. You okay? She asked. Caleb smiled. Yeah, he said. I think. He looked up at her. I think the story finally ended. Emily kissed his forehead. I think it did too. They slept. The house breathed. The town dreamed gently. And somewhere, very, very far away, a piece of darkness realized it no longer had a name. Epilogue. Some stories die. Some remain. And some survive inside the people who live them. Zodiac was not a man. He was a wound. And wounds do not last forever.